Hello, friends, and welcome to episode number 54 of a Disney Life podcast. We're so happy that you are here with us today to chat about all things Disney. And we do have an official Disney episode today with all Disney talk for the most part. I can't promise that we won't veer off on another track because, these are all pretty authentic conversations that we have here. My name is Missy, and I am joined here by my co host, Rachel. Hi, Rachel. It's great to chat with you today.
Good to chat with you too, Missy.
I'm so glad you're back because you were gone for a while. You had a nice extended trip. In last week's episode, we talked about the Royal Caribbean part of your vacation. And then afterwards, you headed to Walt Disney World for a few days. So that's what we'll be chatting about today and asking our listeners to join in on. We've had a couple exciting things happening the last few weeks at Walt Disney World. First of all, Bluey has finally arrived at Disney World and has been meeting guests in Animal Kingdom. When that first started, it was a virtual queue situation, but since they moved on to standby, so it is just a regular standby line there to visit Bluey. Of course, that could change at any time. Disney constantly changes things. I swear we record episodes and they somehow know before we even publish them. And then suddenly before
It's
something
different.
airs, it changes again. But yeah, for
Yeah.
the time being, you can meet Bluey by standby line at Animal Kingdom. We also have Rock and Roller Coaster has reopened, which we've talked about a few times here before that was coming. Soarin' Across America is now open at Epcot. Big Thunder Mountain has reopened at Magic Kingdom. So many exciting things. So Cool Kids Summer is in full swing at this point, ready for summertime, and that lasts through the end of the summer. At this point, you can use your free water park admission on your arrival day if you are staying as a Walt Disney World Resort guest. This works whether you have a room only reservation or a package. There's no ticket required with this. This is an amenity, a benefit for you as a Walt Disney World Resort hotel guest. So you are able to visit that water park on your arrival day for free, either of Disney World's water parks, Typhoon Lagoon or Blizzard Beach, now through arrivals of September 8th. That's the day that benefit expires this year, September 8th. So lots of fun happening at Disney World this summer. Whether you plan on visiting or not, we are absolutely thrilled that you're here with us today to chat about it. So thanks for joining us and stay tuned.
Today, I am going to be talking about my Walt Disney World trip with you. I did want to go back and mention if you listen to episode 53, where I talked about my time on Royal Caribbean's cruise ship, one big thing that I forgot to mention is that I actually got to meet kind of a semi-celebrity while on board, which was pretty cool. I got to meet a man named Super Mario. Missy, have you heard of him before?
I absolutely have heard of him. If our listeners aren't aware, this is not a video game character we are talking
Yeah.
about right now. We're not talking about something you'll find over at Epic Universe. It's a real live man who, wow, he's living the dream, I guess
Yes.
you could say, over on Royal Caribbean.
Yes, he has been on over 1,000 cruises with Royal Caribbean. And when I met him, I told my parents about it. I actually met him on an elevator. He was on the elevator and he had on a shirt that said Super Mario. And I said, "Are you the gentleman that's been on so many cruises?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, it's nice to meet you. And here's to many more." That's all I said. We were at our floor and I got off. And so I told my parents and my husband, because of course, anytime as the introvert of the marriage, anytime that I step out and speak to strangers, he's always like, "What was that?" So I told them and I said, "He's been on over 1,000 cruises." And then I was thinking, like, that's a huge number. Like, maybe I misunderstood from hearing about him before. Maybe it was just 1,000 nights on Royal Caribbean, which is still big. But
Uh-huh.
I looked him up one night and no, it is over 1,000 cruises. He has been cruising consistently since the year 2000 with Royal
Wow.
Caribbean. Yes. And by consistently, what I read said he only spends about 2 weeks per year on land. And so, with the exception of when COVID happened and cruising was down for 15 months, he has been on a Royal Caribbean cruise consistently since the year 2000. And he was on the Allure this time with us. So, that was pretty neat to run into him. In fact, Royal Caribbean plays this up quite a bit. They had actually a trivia hosted by him one
Oh,
day.
wow. Good
Yes.
for him. That's great.
Yeah,
Good for
so it
him.
was like a Crown and Anchor trivia. We didn't go to that, we had other plans at the time. I believe it was the day we were in Aruba, so we were off the ship at that time when that happened. But Another time, my husband was walking along the pool deck, and there was a section roped off by Royal Caribbean, and it said Super Mario's office. They had a sign up that said Super Mario's office.
That is
And
hilarious.
so, yeah, so he works from the ship. He's able to work remotely, and I guess this takes working remotely to a new level, and they had a workspace set up for him. That was a neat experience. I didn't want to ask for a photo or anything. From what I've understand, even though he does this, he's a pretty private person, so but that was still neat to be able to say, "I met Super Mario."
Well, that is super cool. He kind of gives me hope. And one thing I never want to do on this podcast is dwell in the past, especially in the year 2020. But I think the reason 2020 got so sad for me was that even though I'm somebody who loves travel, to me, I'm almost equally as happy knowing somebody else is traveling and enjoying an experience as I am personally. I'm not somebody who's ever going to be jealous because you come and tell me you're going to Disney World. Some of you may be listening to this and thinking, well, of course not, you jerk, because you go there pretty frequently. But I mean, I'm going way back to when we were literally saving pennies and could maybe get there every 2 or 3 years, back when I was first an adult paying for my own travel, that kind of thing. And we didn't visit Disney as a kid. My first trip to Disney World was in 2001 and I paid for it myself. So it's not like, anyway, I'm off on this tangent here so far. But my point that I'm trying to make is during 2020, when nobody was on ships, it was so incredibly sad to me knowing that. I mean, I guess we had a couple crew members out there, but that must have been depressing also. But every once in a
Yes.
while, I just think of Super Mario from home. I mean, I've never met the guy, have absolutely no connection with him other than reading about him online. But sometimes I just think like, wow, where is that lucky guy today? And God bless him and good for him because, someone's out there. There's at least this one guy out there enjoying the seas. So that's super
Yes.
cool that you met him.
Yeah.
Very fun.
Yeah,
All
so
right.
yeah. Alright, so
Now that I
moving
said we,
on.
yeah, maybe we'll talk about Disney now.
Yeah, maybe we'll talk about Disney now.
I
So,
just said we were only talking
that
about
little
Disney.
side
And
quest into Royal Caribbean, but when we got off the ship on May the 24th, I mentioned in the last episode, my, mom and I drove my dad and my husband to the airport so they could come back home, and, we had driven 2 cars to the airport to drop their car off before we drove on the rest of the way, but, I just had this wild idea that if I'm all the way in Florida, driving in Fort Lauderdale, and I have to drive through Orlando to get back home, I might as well stop for a couple of days, why not?
that's
So
very resourceful of you.
yes. Yeah. So we were on our way by 9 a.m. to Walt Disney World and hoping to get there by noon or a little bit before that. I rented a stroller to be picked up. Now, if you are not aware, there is only one company that is authorized to drop off strollers with bell services at the Walt Disney World resorts. I did not order from that company. I rented from a different company, and so you do have to set up and arrange a meeting time. And
Was that
they
because of cost, Rachel? Or why did you choose to rent from a different company?
cost reviews, and I've rented from this company several times and have always had positive experiences.
Okay.
So, loyalty, I guess you could say from that too. And cost, it was maybe honestly only $5 different. So there was not a huge
Okay.
difference. But when I was looking at everything and I thought, I'd much rather use the company that I'm used to and that I know will work with me as opposed to the company that can drop off, but I've seen some pretty negative reviews about over the years.
Okay.
Anyways,
So basically, it's like when you're renting a scooter, a mobilized wheelchair, that there's the one company that's allowed to drop off with bell services. You could pick it up anytime and don't need to be there. But if you
mhm.
use another company, you need to arrange a time that you're taking the item. Is that what you're
Yes.
saying? Same thing.
You
Okay.
return the time to go and pick it up because bell services will not handle it at all. You need to meet the driver to pick up and for drop off. Drop off was not really a concern. I set up for an 8 a.m. drop off the day that we were heading back home, but I had a pretty big window. I had a 12 noon to a 1 p.m. of a potential drop off at the resort time. So we needed to be there. And we did have a few bathroom breaks along the way on a 3-hour stretch. It's amazing how many times you need to stop to go use the restroom when you're traveling with small children. But I got a text from our driver that said he would be at the resort about 12:25, and I had my mom text him back because I was driving, and I said, "Great, well, we're supposed to be there at 12:15." So we arrived, we were staying at Disney's Pop Century Resort, and let me tell you, it's been years since I have stayed there. I believe it's been since before their big overhaul refurbishment of the rooms.
Oh, wow. So that was
Yeah.
that before Skyliner also then? Or
Yes, it
around the
was
same
before
time?
Skyliner.
Yeah.
I've stayed at Art of Animation several times because of
Okay.
the family suites, it's really convenient, but we booked 2 guaranteed connecting rooms because we had 2 adults and 3 children, we were able to book those together, and we wanted to stay at Disney's Pop Century Resort. It's a favorite among fans for the value resorts, and a lot of the rooms, have been refreshed even since then. They've also done another refurbishment. It's not as big, but they have made quite a few changes. So we got to the resort about 12:15, right on time. The driver was not there with our stroller yet. And one thing that I will say that I'm surprised by, and maybe I've just been a little bit spoiled by staying at moderates and deluxe resorts lately, there was nobody there to handle our luggage. As soon as you pull up into a deluxe resort, you can't even open the door because they're opening it for you.
Well, I've had that same experience at Pop Century with them assisting with things when you arrive. So
Okay.
that must have just been some type of a one-off fluke. I don't
Yeah.
think that's customary. And they do have their luggage services kind of like around the back now, right? It's not like super duper. I guess the drop
Well,
off is in the back and it opens in the front also, right?
yeah,
But
there's a
yeah,
window in
there's
the
usually
front.
someone
Yeah.
around.
Yes, and so but there was an empty luggage cart, so I went ahead and unloaded the van, and, this gentleman did come over who was clearly with Bell Services. He was probably a supervisor of some sort. He was dressed differently, and he did say, "Nice job packing the cart," and I said, "Thanks." I was watching other people.
Maybe he was just on a water break or something like
Yeah,
that and
so
came out and you're like, oh
yeah.
no, this lady did it herself.
So he tagged our bags for us, and took them back for us. So he did do that for us. But it was surprising and it kind of gave me a little pause because this was Memorial Day weekend. Crowds in the past couple years have not been too bad over Memorial Day weekend, but I was a little bit worried. Maybe this was going to be a busy weekend because
Uh-huh.
considering just there was nobody, didn't seem anybody around to help out and assist. But anyways, we got inside the building, we checked in. I always check in person. I very, very rarely will do online check in. And this was no exception. I checked in person. And a big reason why is because my mom and I would be on the same account, but we want our individual cards to be charged for our purchases. So
Uh-huh.
that is something you need to do in person. And we got there, our room was not ready. We already planned to go ahead and have lunch at Everything Pop, and that's what we did. We took the kids in, had lunch there. We did have the quick service dining plan.
Okay.
Yes, and you can debate the dining plan all you want to, but for 2026, considering that kids ages 3 through 9 are free on the dining plan with the adult purchase, it was a no-brainer for us.
Yeah,
We
that's a
had
good
yeah,
deal. That's a really
yes,
good deal with you guys. I
yes,
almost said, why would the quick service does not seem to be a very, I don't want to say it's not commonly used, but when you hear somebody's using the dining plan, I feel like 90% of the time it's going to be the table service dining
yes.
plan. It's not going to be the one that's just quick service. So I almost asked you why, but I forgot about it being included for free. And that's a benefit that's ending after
Mhm.
2026. So good time to take advantage of it.
Yes, and especially now because my oldest will be turning 10 in just a few months, so, this was the perfect time, and this was not, 1 kid per adult. I was able to get all 3 of my children on this
Uh-huh.
quick service plan for free, so we saved a lot of money on food, and we would typically choose a Disney dining plan, but we chose the quick service this year because we had only 3 days in the parks. We did
Uh-huh.
not want to use a lot of time using the Disney dining plan. So we went in, got our mugs, got everything situated. One thing to know if you have connecting rooms, just because you have connecting rooms, just because I could see all the credits for the other room, I could not use my card to access those credits.
Okay. So
Yeah.
somebody from each room had to do that. Hmm.
Yeah, somebody from each room, which was fine. We just took everything as it is. I did get key to the world cards for everybody in our party. So if I needed to access their credits, I would just use one of their key to the world cards. Not a big deal at all. And
Okay,
so
so let's go back there a bit to just explain that connecting room to our listeners who may
mhm,
not be familiar with it because it's something that isn't very commonly known. That if you are traveling with two adults but more children than can fit in the room as far as the appropriate accommodations for fire code go, you will be permitted to book a second room under that same reservation at a guarantee that you will have a connecting door between the
yes.
rooms. So it is something that you would either need to call in on the phone to talk to a human for. Or
Yeah.
else use a travel agent. If you got a great travel agent, do that, and they should certainly know how to handle that for you pretty easily. So that's what Rachel's talking about when she says there's two rooms, but they're guaranteed to be correct,
Yeah.
connected.
Yes, and it is one reservation number, and you do only pay one deposit. However, you do pay for two rooms. It's not just a two for the price of one
Right.
type
Yeah. It's
deal.
not a BOGO deal.
That would
No.
be so nice,
But
but
you'll get one confirmation number, but two rooms, which is what
Mhm.
causes the trickiness Rachel's mentioning when she talks about the dining plan usage. And
Yes.
typically, when you're in a situation like this, you're eating your meals together anyway. So it's not really going to be a problem. But I can see how if somebody wasn't aware ahead of time, maybe didn't really plan things out, because a lot of people go to Disney without as much planning as I think they should. I could see how they could look at their remaining credits and think they were out and not realize the remainder of them were on the other room. So
Yes, yeah,
that could be tricky.
absolutely. Yes. So, while we were eating lunch and I got the mugs for everybody and started filling those up, while my mom got the food with the older children, and then we just kinda sat down and shared everything, and we were trying to get out. We wanted to go to Hollywood Studios that day. By this point, it's already 1 p.m. So we wanted to get out and get going, but I got a text that our room was ready while we were eating lunch. And so I said, well, I'd like to go check out our room and check out to see what the wait would be for Bell Services to bring our luggage, because I don't want to be calling them at 10 p.m. asking for our
Trying to
luggage.
get it done. Yeah.
Yes, and trying to get the kids in bed. So we went ahead. She took the kids over to the room while I went over to the Bell Services window and said, hey, our room's ready. Here's where it's located. Do you have any estimate of how long it might be before somebody can get over there? And they said, about 30 to 45 minutes. So we went into our rooms. We were in the 50 section in building 3. This was fantastic. This was really close to the main building, which the 60 section kind of is surrounding the main buildings there. So we were right off of that section.
So
We were in
that is the 50 section. So that's if you walk out of Everything Pop and go to the right,
Yes,
correct? That's
correct.
where they have the bowling pin decorations, and the bowling
Yes.
pin pool
Yes.
is in the middle. Okay.
Yes.
Very good.
Yes, and so we had the Lady and the Tramp are the statues there. We were in the
Okay.
building behind where the Tramp is located. That made my youngest daughter, who loves dogs and often acts like one, that made her so happy, and as soon as I got in the room, she said, "There's a puppy outside of our room." So
Oh,
she was
that is so
very, very
sweet.
happy. Yes. So, we went in there, just kind of got settled as quickly as we could. I took a few photos of our room, and we waited about 40 minutes. Bell services still wasn't there. My mom called just to say, "Hey, any idea when luggage might be here?" And they said, "Well, we don't know, but you can leave." And so we said, "Okay, we're gonna leave." And we did. So, but by the time we got back to the room that night, our luggage was in our room waiting for us. That was nice. That was a nice thing to have. And I don't know if you need to necessarily always request that. I have transferred resorts before and had that happen, but I've also transferred resorts before and had to call for our luggage too.
Mhm.
But
Okay. All
at
right. So I
that
want to
point,
back up real quick too.
yeah.
I feel like you're saying so much, and I don't want to interrupt because I'm interested in everything you're saying, but I have so many things to say, of course. I had forgotten about the free refill mugs that you get with the dining plan too.
Yes.
So not only did your 3 kids eat for free, but you had a free mug for all 5 of you, correct?
Yes.
So, I
All
mean,
5 of us. Yes.
basically, at this point, we're getting close to them paying for you to stay there. I mean, that was an incredibly resourceful decision of yours. It probably costs less money for you guys to stay there than to be at home those few days, because if you were at home, you would have been having to purchase food for your children and make it.
Yeah.
So, I
Yeah,
mean,
we spent very little money out of pocket on this trip by the time everything was paid for, and another reason why I wanted to go to the room is I did not want to carry our mugs with us to the resort sorry, to the parks. I know people do, and they stick them in their backpacks. For me, the less I can carry, the better, even though we had a stroller, but the less that will go into it, the better, and if you have taken a stroller to Walt Disney World, you have to clean that thing out basically to go through security, so
right.
so I don't like to carry a lot with me. I wanted to drop those mugs off. And so our room actually had a water view. We could see the Skyliner in the distance. It was a great location. We were in building 3 on the 3rd floor, and I will say overall pretty quiet. We could hear some people in the morning leaving their rooms, but overall it was very quiet and very quiet location. Love the rooms. Kids love the rooms. They love the Murphy bed, and this time they got to sleep in the Murphy bed. In years past, I have slept in the Murphy bed because the bed rails will not go onto the Murphy bed that
I
Walt Disney
remember
World
you
provides.
saying that before. So they're beyond
Yeah.
needing bed rails now and they got
Yes,
to
they are
sleep on
beyond
that?
needing bed rails, and I was like, "I'm taking the actual bed," but at that point, we walked over to the Skyliner to take that Skyliner to Hollywood Studios. We transferred at Caribbean Beach Resort. Since I only had a single stroller that we rented, it was nice not having to fold anything up to get into the Skyliner. We've had doubles in the past, and that is such a pain to have to take
Mhm.
everything out, fold it up, and get on. But you have to because it is a narrow entryway. However, I did have trouble getting the stroller on the Skyliner
Oh, no.
because I mean, it's moving, and when you rent the jogging strollers, the back wheels are pretty wide, and they're about as wide as the door entryway, and you're trying to get this on and move it while the Skyliner is in motion as well, so it
Wiggle
took
it
a couple
through.
of times of wiggling it through. The first time we got on, my daughter Madeline got on the Skyliner first, and then I followed, and I had to back out and do it again, and she's going, "Mom, Mom," and I said, "They would stop this before they're going to let you go off by yourself."
One would hope. I don't know.
Yes. And I said, "After that, let me on first, and then you guys can follow behind." But we arrived to Hollywood Studios around 2:40 in the afternoon. This was, again, May 24th. This was the Sunday of Memorial Day weekend. We went straight to Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway because this was something we can all enjoy together. And
Mhm.
that was our first attraction of the day. I think it was posted about a 45-minute wait. We were out within 30. From there, we went to Star Tours, Smuggler's Run, which we did the new Mandalorian and Grogu setting on
Yes.
that. I will mention that scene. So I was a pilot. Madeline, my 7-year-old, was also a pilot. She wanted to be that. My son Lincoln wanted to be a gunner. My mom and Meredith sat out on it. Meredith is tall enough to go on it, but with the way that the seating is arranged, it's kind of difficult to put a child by themselves
You wanna
if
be
they
more hands-on than that,
Yes, yes,
absolutely, yeah, there's no place in there that you could really be holding on to her, so, yeah,
yes,
for a
yeah.
three-year-old, even though she's a tall three-year-old, that's probably a no-go, yeah.
Right. So I knew that, and my mom told me the last time she rode Smuggler's Run, it made her motion sick, so that was an easy out for her.
Yes.
And so we did the Mandalorian overlay, and it was a completely different attraction. You still are trying to get the loot basically, but it seemed to be easier, if that makes
Right.
sense. It was less chaotic than the previous ones, and I'm wondering if, they've just gotten feedback from guests about it, but piloting it seemed a lot smoother, especially piloting it with a 7-year-old, so no problems there. Afterwards, we walked over and rode Alien Swirling Saucers. So Madeline turned 7 back in January, and according to Walt Disney World's rules, a child can ride by themselves if they are 7.
Oh, well, I don't
Um,
think I even knew that. I guess I've
yes,
never really looked at the restrictions on that
yes,
ride because
yes.
I
Now
think
they
I've
do
ridden it once, it's not
well, that is throughout all the parks, so they must be accompanied by someone at least 14 years or older, but they
okay,
can be in their own vehicle by themselves. So
once they're
she
7, okay.
was so excited, and, so she asked, she said, "Mom, can I get my own?" She loves Alien Swirling Saucer. She said, "Mom, can I get my own?" And I said, "Well, if it's crowded, if they're trying to move a lot of people through, no, I'm not going to take
Take a
up an
space,
extra
you're
one."
right.
Yes. I said, "But if it's not, I'm happy to ask." So it was not bad. We walked pretty much right on to the loading area, and she was able to ride her own. She thought she was so special. So,
Queen bee, that child of
yes.
yours, good for
This
her.
this became a theme throughout, and she did the same on Toy Story Midway Mania. She rode by herself while everybody else shared, and so we did all of those things, and then we walked over and we checked out the new Walt Disney Studios area. This was not officially opened yet. As far as I've seen photos, read a lot of things about new character interactions that seem very spontaneous and feel very spontaneous for the guests. I saw a video of Rapunzel braiding little girl's hair in the lawn
Oh,
area. So none of that was going on, but they did have the area open where you could go and see the statues and see the new, I guess, handprint area, kind of like what they had around. I just remember it being where Great Movie Ride was located. They had all the things like they had at the Hollywood Walk of Fame with all the handprints. And so they have that with Disney characters. One of my favorites was Ursula because they had prints for all of her tentacles,
oh,
which
that's
was
funny.
fun. Yeah. So that was a good little nod that Disney had. But I walked around trying to see what characters I could find, as many as I could, while the kids enjoyed a snack on a close by bench with my mom. At that point, Tower of Terror had a pretty low wait, and that's one of mine and my son's favorites, so we wanted to go and do that, and, I kept asking my mom, like, "Do you want tell me what you want to do or don't want to do," and she usually loves Tower of Terror, but she said, I'll skip it this time," and she took the girls into the Little Mermaid show instead.
Oh, that's sweet. She'd rather be grandmaing on this
Yes,
trip
so she
than
was,
picking her
and
own rides, so that's
right,
sweet.
right. So we went on Tower of Terror and we finished up a little bit before they did. So my son and I walked over to the rock and roller coaster area just to check things out. We could not get on because they were doing annual pass holder previews. We are not annual pass holders, but I did want to go and see the new guitar. It is pretty funky looking. I enjoy all the color swirls and everything. It looks very psychedelic, so it's very appropriate for the theme that they're going for. And then we decided to have dinner. One big reason we went ahead and had lunch at Pop Century was because Hollywood Studios does not exactly meet our dining needs all the time. And we did not want to eat at table service because of our limited time, but we went and ate at Backlot Express, which seems to be our standard dining location when we need a quick service meal at Hollywood Studios. We ate over in the outdoor area that's close to the Indiana Jones stunt show theater, which is typically where we end up eating. One thing I like about this is that you can go and refill your beverages as needed at this place. You don't have to wait for them. And so we definitely took advantage with our quick service credits. I got a chicken teriyaki bowl. I was pretty pleased with that. It was pretty good. And we ate. And then I was checking wait times the entire time we were there. And Rise the Resistance was about a 25-minute wait.
Wow, that's so
Yeah.
what time of day are we getting to be at this point?
At this point, it had to be close to 8 o'clock, somewhere between 8 and
Okay.
8:30. So,
So middle of the evening, really, later in the evening, and
yeah.
the lines might be a little shorter for it. Okay.
Yes. Now, Hollywood Studios was open until 10 o'clock, and we
Okay.
had debated a few times whether or not we wanted to try to go see Fantasmic. My children have never seen Fantasmic, so
Oh, I
we
don't
need to
blame
get
you.
that taken care of. But
It is not something we always do either.
right.
It's one of those things that I feel like there's so many things to do in that park that are like bigger thrill
Mhm.
rides, take more time planning, whether you have a lightning lane or you're standing in the standby line. I feel that park takes a lot out of you if you're spending a
Yes.
whole day there. So by the time it's the end of the day, do I want to go sit on those hot benches that have been in the sun all day long and wait for a show in a crowd and then get herded out of there like cattle? Like, maybe, maybe not. So,
Yeah.
more often than not, we don't stick around. We've seen it since it was redone a few years ago and enjoyed it, but it's definitely not a must do like some of the nighttime shows are for us.
Yeah, and I do enjoy Fantasmic, and we really debated it. There were actually 2 Fantasmic shows that night. At one point, we had reserved a Fantasmic dining package, but we decided to cancel it a couple of days beforehand. And so I knew, at least there's another show, but we also getting off of an 8-day cruise and then having to drive from Fort Lauderdale and be up early in the morning. I didn't want to push the kids too much on that
Uh-huh.
day. So we kind of let, how they were feeling really determine a lot of things. Madeline really wanted to go ride on Rise of Resistance. She is not my thrill ride lover, and I wouldn't necessarily call Rise of Resistance a thrill ride, but I did want to kind of throw her a bone of something if
Uh-huh.
she wants to go do it. So we got in line. That was our longest line of the day. And we were out of the park by 9:15. Again, the park official closing time was 10 o'clock. We walked over the Skyliner. There was no wait whatsoever. It was so nice. And we had an amazing day. We did 7 rides in less than 7 hours with no lightning lanes.
No lightning lane and no rope drop either. So
Yes, no
that
lightning
says a
lane, no
lot.
rope. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, we did book it to quite a few attractions, but I feel like, we didn't do a lot of backtracking necessarily, and, my son had wanted to go on Slinky Dog Dash, and so once we were off of Rise of Resistance, I kept checking the wait times, and it never really went below 50 minutes, and I said, "Okay, it's at 50 minutes. It might not really be that. I will take you if you want to go." And he said, "Let's just go back. I'm tired." So I said, "Okay, that's fine." And I needed to do laundry that night too. So I was okay with that because I stayed up until almost 1 a.m. getting all of our laundry done.
Oh, wow. That's a lot of
Yes.
laundry, but isn't it nice that Disney has a laundry facility for you?
Yes, and at Disney's
Seriously.
Pop Century Resort, there
Mhm,
each section has its own laundry facility too, so that
mhm,
was also very nice to not have to go and lug our laundry all around the resort, so I
mhm,
appreciated that too, because I know at Disney's Contemporary Resort, I have done laundry there also, and that is located in the garden wing, so if you're staying in the tower, you have to kinda trek out there to go and get your laundry
uh-huh,
done, so that was a big difference. The next day was May 25th. This was Memorial Day, and we were going to the Magic Kingdom. We were planning on spending all day at the Magic Kingdom and taking a break in the afternoon for dinner. That morning, we got up and went over to Everything Pop for breakfast. We knew because of our plans we would have an extra quick service dining credit at some point. So we got a few things for breakfast. You know, my son wanted a chocolate chip muffin, not a big deal. But my daughter saw the Mickey waffles and wanted those. So, of
uh-huh.
course, right? You have to. So I got her some Mickey waffles. We ate quickly in the quick service location there. And then we got to the Magic Kingdom. One thing that I've never done before when we got there, my daughter saw the omnibus to the castle
Uh-huh.
was loading. And she said, "Hey, can we get on that?" So I took my two oldest children to go do that while my mom pushed the stroller down over towards Tomorrowland. Tomorrowland is always our first stop. So
So listen, Rachel's mom, if you're listening, thank you. Rachel appreciates you, and I'm sure that you just loved being able to be grandma and be there and handle all those extra things. So, and
yes.
of course, give the bigger kiddos the experience with being able to go ahead and ride that down Main Street. So,
Yeah.
thank goodness
Yes.
for mom, or you would have been leaving them at one end and running back for the stroller. So,
Right, yeah, yeah, because
where's the
yes,
stroller parking here?
it's a one-way take, so but we rode the omnibus and, then we went over to Tomorrowland. We got on Space Mountain. My son and I love Space Mountain, and so we rode it. Could not talk Madeline into going on it, but we rode it twice. And while we did, my mom took the girls onto the People Mover and over to Tomorrowland Speedway. So they were excited to do that. Now, even though Madeline is able to ride attractions by herself at 7, this was an exception. She was not able to go on that by herself completely, have her own
Wow.
vehicle, but she was able to drive. And so we met up after that and rode Buzz Lightyear, which recently underwent quite a lengthy enhancement. And with the new laser guns where you can actually take them, move them, and take them out. And I loved it. I loved the upgrades. This is a major upgrade for this attraction. And it was so nice because you had colors for your lasers. My daughter's I rode with my youngest daughter, her laser was red, mine was green. So you could actually see
I tell
where
which is
your
which.
yes,
Okay,
you could tell which
that's
is which.
helpful.
Yes, and your it would kind of buzz and vibrate once you hit a target. So it was very helpful to know, hey, this is mine and this is what we're shooting. I was proud of her. She managed to get 3,000 points. I was she had no idea what she was doing, but she was a trooper on it. Afterwards, while they were on the speedway, my youngest saw the teacups and so she told me we were going on the teacups. There was no negotiating. We were
Mm.
going on there and so we did.
That would be a no for me. I think I've been on the teacups with my kids once, and it was a one and done. Like, for the nostalgia of it, I will ride it with you because you kinda have to the first time
Mhm.
around, and then, nope, no thank you.
Right. Well, and I did not let the older 2 kids spin it too fast for her sake,
Uh-huh.
so we spun and everything, but we kinda took a leisurely stroll around, and Meredith also told me earlier that day that she wanted to ride the flying elephant. So this is before we ever even got into the park, she wanted to ride the flying elephant, so we went on Dumbo. While we were in line for Dumbo, she saw Barnstormer, Goofy's
Uh-huh.
Barnstormer, and she looked at me and she said, "That ride looks amazing."
She's the sweetest little thing.
Yes. So we got in line for Goofy's Barnstormer, and this is definitely where your kids' different personalities come out. The Barnstormer has the worst line possible. By this point, it's midday. It was hot. It was a very hot weekend. This day, I think it got to about 94, 95 degrees outside. So it was
Oh
a hot day. Yes.
my.
Yeah. There's not a lot of shade in that attraction. There is shade every 15 feet. They kind of have this round parachute type thing that gives a little bit of shade. People were stalling at these until they could get to the next one. I get
Mhm.
it. And
Uh-huh.
especially having, a 3-year-old, my 9-year-old and 3-year-old got in line with me. They both have very fair skin. We were trying to stay as shaded as
A little
possible.
protected, yeah.
Yes. And then when we got up there, there were 2 rows that they were not loading at all, so it took a really long time to be in that line. While we were in line, Madeline decided not to ride it. She thought it was too scary of a roller coaster, and then she regretted it as
Aw.
we're getting through there. So, as as awful as it sounds, my mom called me at one point. She said, "Where are you?" I said, "We're about to be in the loading area." And she said, "Well, Madeline really wants to come ride." And I said, I'm sorry. Like, she had to make that decision earlier." And I said, and I told her later, I said, "Madeline, I'm not going to put you on anything that's going to be dangerous for you. She loves Guardians. We were going to do Guardians of the Galaxy the next day." And I said,
Oh,
"You
for
love this."
goodness sake.
This is an introductory roller coaster. I said, "I'm not going to put Meredith on Guardians of the Galaxy, but I'll put her on this." So, after that, I told her, I said, "Look, we are going to get on Big Thunder Mountain Railroad at some point today." I said, "You need to ride that with us." And I am not a parent that forces my kids to get on rides at all. I don't want the tears. I don't want the fights. I want this to be a fun experience. But I said, after this, I said, "You need to ride
You
Big
need to
Thunder
just
Mountain
do
with
that
us."
one.
Yeah, you just
Yeah,
need to do that one.
absolutely. So
So,
going back to you mentioned Dumbo, and I think we had
yes.
talked recently here about whether or not they still had that indoor queue area at
Mhm.
Dumbo. Was that open and operating that day for you guys for a little bit
Yes.
of cooling or
Well, it was open and operating. You can choose to go in or not. We chose not to go in, but it was
okay.
operating. There were children in there who were playing. So yes, it was definitely an option for families
Okay,
to
great.
go in there. Yeah. So, and they seem to have some kind of little system, almost like a restaurant waiting area where you could get like a little something to buzz you when it
Yeah,
was
they
your
have a
turn.
pager there. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what they always used to do. So
Yeah.
very good.
Yes,
Perfect.
but there was no need for it, so we did go and see it, but we kept going, and so Barnstormer ended up being Meredith's favorite ride of our entire trip. When we got back home, actually, well, I called my husband right after that, and she said, "Daddy, I rode a roller coaster, and it was red. Red is her favorite color." So she was so happy to ride the red roller coaster, and she giggled through the whole thing. As we're
Aw.
going down, she's laughing, and
It's perfect. It's red, her favorite
yes,
color. It's goofy. He's a dog.
yes.
It's all of the
It's
things
all the
of
thing
her
yes,
dreams.
yes, absolutely. So, at that point, we went over and had lunch at Cosmic Ray's Starlight Cafe. This is my son's favorite quick service restaurant in all of Walt Disney World. I don't know why.
Does he like to watch Sunny Eclipse, or
No,
does he just like the food and the strange aroma in that cafeteria-like
I
location?
we rarely go into the Sunny Eclipse room to eat because it's
Okay.
the most crowded, but
Mhm.
at one point I figured out he likes it because you can have such a great view of the castle. So
That's
he
true. I
Yeah,
love that
he
boy,
likes to sit
yes.
there yes, and he has to, like, sit there and eat, with the castle in the background. So we had lunch at Cosmic Rays, and after that, we went over and rode Voyage of the Little Mermaid and the Carousel and It's a Small World. We did those things over there. I looked over at Peter Pan,
You
and it had a
did so
very
much, Rachel. You just, like, rattled off a whole list of rides.
Yeah.
Wow, you guys got through a lot on a weekend that you were worried was going to be really busy. So go
Yes.
was this
Yeah.
actually on Memorial Day? Is that what we're
This
on now?
was Memorial Day. This
Okay.
was actually Memorial Day. So and again, we had no lightning lanes for this day. I was thinking about purchasing them. We did purchase them for Epcot. Epcot was the same price as the other 2 parks we're going to be on the other days, and I spent for the 5 of us almost $200 on lightning lanes.
Oh, it's
So I said,
killer.
"That I can't do that the other
You
days."
lose all the food money you saved if you do
Yes,
that, then you
yeah,
blow the whole
absolutely.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought, I could stay here for another 2 days at that cost,
Mhm.
for us, so was not going to pay that amount, so I just said, "Okay, we're going to do what we're going to do," but we got a lot done, and Peter Pan had about a 30-minute wait, which you know what crowds are like if Peter Pan has a 30-minute wait,
Yeah.
which is very
Which
low,
is
but
strange because why does it ever have a 30-minute wait? I mean, other than super slow loading, like, I just
that's
don't
very true, I never
why do the
understand it,
people keep
never,
going to it?
ever
Eventually,
understand it.
enough people should know by now that you don't need to waste your time doing it, but they just keep wasting their time, spending their
Yes.
time doing it.
Yeah.
I hate to call it
Yeah.
wasting because I know of little kids who was completely magical and they were flying over London and it was amazing for them. But once you're beyond 3, magic is
Yeah.
over. So, okay.
Right.
Anyway,
Right,
don't
so
hate me, Peter Pan's flight fans.
no,
I'm just saying there are
I
other things you could wait in line for. Better
I
ways
would
to spend
agree.
30 minutes.
Yes, I would agree. Well, so instead we were looking at wait times. Haunted Mansion had a posted, like, 15-minute wait time, so it was supposed to be a pretty short wait. I do believe it had a few breakdowns because we ended up waiting about 25 minutes for that. Meredith was at that point getting a little antsy. She has this new thing where her legs are tired. They are always tired when as soon
Girl,
as she has a
same.
stroller.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my legs
It's
get tired.
yeah, and I'm like, "You've been riding all day long." So she wanted to be carried, and at
Oh,
90 plus degree weather, I don't want to carry her at all, but anyways, we got her through the line, we got in, and, she rode in a dune buggy with my mom and Madeline. Madeline had asked to ride by herself again, but because I think of the breakdowns yeah, but because of the breakdowns, there was a lot of people in the room, and I said, "No." I said, you have to ride with somebody." And I said, "Why don't you ride with your grandmother so I can ride something with Lincoln today?" And
Madeline is
so
such an example of how you just never know how it's going to go with your kids, because I know you're a very hands-on mom. You are with your kids every day. You're not
yeah,
sending them off to be watched by somebody else. They're with
yeah.
you and you know their tendencies. Yet poor Madeline was afraid of a barnstormer, yet would ride all by herself in the haunted mansion in a dune buggy
Yes.
with no adults. I mean,
Would
that's
know it yes,
what
absolutely.
goes through
Like,
kids' minds? You just
I
can't
don't
predict
know.
that
I
stuff,
don't
you know
know at
what I
all.
mean?
I've yeah,
No
no
matter how
idea.
well you know your kids, you can't predict some things, so
So, as soon as my mom sat down with the girls, apparently Meredith leaned over and fell asleep. Before they were even out of the loading room, she was
well,
out.
she said her legs were tired. I don't know why you weren't expecting that.
So, when and they were in the dune buggy in front of us, and so as soon as we were able to get out, I jumped out and grabbed her and carried her. My mom went and got the stroller, and then I stood in the exit area over to the side so we could, kind of be in a shaded place where she could sleep. And she slept. I held her while she slept. When my mom got the stroller, we got her in there. At that point, we had some time. We did have dinner reservations that night at Chef Mickey's. We did do one table service. I wanted to do that one because that seems to be my kid's favorite. And it also has Pluto, which is Meredith's favorite. And
Yes.
yeah, so we had some time to kill. It was about 3 o'clock at that point, but I wanted her to sleep. So I told my mom, I said, and my mom is a huge Peter Pan ride fan. She loves it and wants to do it every trip. So I said, okay, how about you and Madeline go do Peter Pan? And I suggested Lincoln too. I said, I'm just going to go find a quiet place to sit and let her nap. And
Uh-huh.
so Lincoln went with me. He didn't want to go get in line for Peter Pan. And they got in line. Lincoln and I ended up at the top of the train station
Okay.
inside the building there. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, which is a pretty quiet spot until a train comes along, but it is what it is.
Every 10 minutes, it might get a little noisy there, but yeah,
Yes. Yeah. So we hung out in
intervals.
there and then my mom texted me as they were coming down Main Street. So we hopped onto the monorail. Meredith was still asleep. She probably got a good close to 2 hour nap out of that
Excellent.
day. Yeah.
Very
And
good.
we're out of our naps at home. So this was rare, but much needed. We were one of the first seatings for dinner at Chef Mickey's. And you know what? It was fantastic. The characters had not even come out for dinner yet.
Wow.
So we
Okay.
were,
You were
yeah,
early on. Okay.
we were early and we were able to get our food and sit down with our first plates before they even came out. So I liked that. And then the restaurant was not crowded. They did this very systematically. It was very smart. They filled one section at a time.
Okay.
So, yeah, so we had all the characters come through very quickly with us. And I liked that. I would do that again. I absolutely would. It was nice to have the characters come in, and I don't want to say get that out of the way, but get that out of the
Out of the
way
way. I know
and
exactly
enjoy
what
the
you mean,
meal.
especially when you're
Yeah.
dealing with a buffet. I think
Yes.
that's kind of why I leaned into family style meals so much when the kids were younger and we just kind of stuck with them, because buffets are hard. When you're dealing
Mhm.
with small kids, you're trying to fill their plates, you're filling your own plate, trying to get to eat before your food is cold, but also taking advantage of all the time that the characters can give you. So there's a lot going on. And I feel like they move people through a lot quicker now than they used to also. Maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe it just seems like that to me because I've done it more and I'm older. And I feel rushed more. I can't eat as much as I used to, and it takes me longer to eat than it used to. So I don't
Yeah.
know what's happening with that. When you're 46 years old, I guess that's what happens. I don't know, but yeah, it's just tough when you're dealing with a buffet like that. So that is nice that everybody was grouped together in there, and you were able to experience the characters right off the bat, so you weren't having to worry about that. It's great.
Yeah. Yeah, I liked that and that we were in there before really any sort of dinner rush. So if you want to eat dinner there, 5 PM was a great time to not feel like the buffet was too crowded yet. You got character time, before their clothes got dirty for the day, and because I happened at the Crystal Palace at one of their last seatings and, poor Winnie the Pooh was covered in food at that point. So
Oh, ooh. Ugh, I
Yeah,
hadn't thought of
yeah,
that.
it just I mean, when you've got little kids, it happens. So we went, had dinner there, and I will also say, so Pluto is my youngest daughter's favorite. She absolutely adores Pluto. I think we've got at this point 5 or 6 stuffed animals that are Pluto. We have a few duplicates put away just in case, and there is
Smart move.
one, yeah.
Genius move.
There is one dog, that a stuffed animal that is her favorite, and we actually got it at the Biltmore house a couple of years ago, and we lost it on one of our trips. We thought we had left it in a hotel room and did not realize it until after we came back. Well, we were looking through our toddler we do have toddler-size blow-up air mattresses, and we were pulling some of those out, and sure enough, bundled inside of it was this stuffed animal, and
Oh,
so
well.
yeah, so he came on our trip with us, but I told her he had to stay in the room this time. Last time we were at Walt Disney World, one of her Plutos came along everywhere we went, and that poor dog was filthy by the time we got home.
Yes,
But she
sometimes
did,
if you really love your stuffy, you need to leave it behind in the room, and,
yes.
so I don't wanna give away any child secrets, but my kids are pretty old, and one of them still has a blankie, and it was actually a used to be a burp cloth ages ago, like a tiny little receiving blanket. It has Winnie the Pooh and friends on it, and also just a regular stuffed teddy bear, and she still takes them everywhere, and it still, to this day, is the very first thing I do when I get up in the morning in a hotel with her, put them in a drawer. Put it in a drawer, like, it's the very if nothing else is put in a drawer during that vacation, those things are put in a drawer, because especially the blankie is, like, so light, it would get tossed with a pillowcase, and you would never see the darn thing
Yeah,
again. You could practically see through it, and it's small, so, yeah, you those things in our family have always stayed in the rooms because they'd be too
yeah.
easy to lose. But how about that game of hide and seek that her toy was playing all this time?
Yes. Yes,
I'm
yes,
so glad it
yes.
reappeared.
Me too. Well, and she didn't really we have a smaller version of it, which we've had, and so she never asked about the big one, and so we just kind of let it go because I didn't wanna
It's a
be
good
like,
thing it wasn't something you tried to sneak in a backup and replace, and then it would be,
yeah.
wait a minute, what is
So,
happening
yeah,
here?
but she was so happy to have it back, so he stayed in the room. It was always, "Well, he needs to watch the room." His name is Cedric. Cedric needs to stay and watch the room, so she was good about having no stuffed animal with her, but when before our table was called, we did go through the shops at the Contemporary, and she saw a Pluto that, believe it or not, she doesn't have. So, Pluto was purchased. My mom gave each of the kids a Disney gift card before we arrived at Walt Disney World, and that's what she used hers on. So, Pluto
Aw.
spent the rest of the day with us at the Magic Kingdom, and he met all the characters, and when the actual Pluto got to our table, she stood up with her stuffed Pluto, and they were both shaking with excitement. They were wagging their tails. So, had a fantastic time doing that. Then we went back over to the Magic Kingdom. When we got to the Magic Kingdom, I realized this is an after hours event day. So,
Still
yes.
crowded. Crowded through
So,
the night,
yes, there was a
yes.
huge crowd. There were only like 2 turnstiles where they were allowing guests in who were not after hours ticket holders through. So it took some time to get back to the Magic Kingdom. My mom was like, "What is going on?" And I said, "Oh, it must be an after hours event." And since I wasn't planning on going to one, I just didn't even look up dates for that. But and then she said, "Well, we should have done our dinner later and then gone here," because she was worried about the crowds. And I was like, "Okay, we're just gonna roll with it and see what happens." So I said, "Let's get to the Big Thunder Mountain first, because I think that will be one of the more crowded attractions as more people come in since all these changes have been made." So we went over to Big Thunder Mountain, told Madeline, "You're doing this with us." She said, "Can I hold on to you?" I said, "Of course. I won't, you can hold on to me as tightly as you want to." So I got in the middle of both girls, and Meredith loved it again, giggling, going "we" the whole time. So the changes for it, I mean, there's just one scene that really has the most noticeable change. Other than that, it's still the same attraction, and it felt pretty smooth. The seats were nice and cushioned, so I
So
don't know.
is it noticeably smoother? Because the rickety rocking is what always gives me a massive headache, and I tend to skip that ride if like, I can kinda tell my body, like, am I gonna be
Yeah,
able to handle this today, or am I gonna be nauseated for the rest of the day if I get shook around on that? So did it seem
right.
smoother to you than it used to be?
It seemed a lot smoother, and with the padded seats, I think that helps quite a bit, being able to, not feel like
Absorb it? Mhm.
Yes, or, bracing on something hard or anything like that. So, you still have the moving to one side or the other going on, but I
Right.
did think it did feel a lot smoother, and here I am, having to hold with my arm around my 3-year-old and my other arm with a 7-year-old wrapped around it. So, we did what we could. But at that point, we went on to the actually, the line was shorter than when we got in, and we waited probably about 25 minutes, but it was pretty continuously moving throughout the whole time. And we never stopped for too long in that, but we would move in, small segments at a time. But when we got off of it, the line was shorter than when we had gotten on. And so I kind of joked. I just said, "Hey, well, why don't we go on it again?" Thinking
Oh,
Madeline was
wow.
going to be like, "No, no way." And she was like, "Yeah, I might do it again." And I said, "Well, I was kidding, but I'm glad that you didn't hate it." So afterwards, we went on Pirates. It was a walk on, which is kind of unusual these days. Pirates typically
Yeah.
have a wait. So we went on Pirates. It was a walk on. And then my girls saw the flying carpets attraction. So my mom took them on it.
Ooh.
Why they like that ride so much is because you do have the potential and possibility of getting wet. And so grandma, being a good grandma, let the kids get wet.
Oh,
So
boy.
yes, at that point, it was getting later, after hours, more crowds were coming in. It did not still feel that crowded. So we decided we were going to go ahead and leave and catch a bus back before park officially closed or before the fireworks to beat some of the people out. And that's what our second day was. And again, we did a lot. We did a whole lot for
Sounded
that
like
day.
a full day to me, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was another one. My son loves Tron. I think Tron is his favorite attraction. And so it was another deal where, hey, I'm willing to take you on it, but he just didn't feel like waiting in line.
Oh,
So he made it
yeah.
easy for us, which I appreciate from
Yes.
him. So our next day, May 26th, this was the official beginning of Cool Kids Summer. Now, since had already checked into Disney's Pop Century Resort, we did not have the access to the free water park for that day, but we weren't going to use it anyways. But this day we wanted to go to Epcot. We kind of once the trip was already planned and we found out the new opening date of Soarin' Across America, we purposely planned our Epcot day for May 26th to be able to make sure that we got on this attraction. Soarin' is one of my favorites. It's one of my mom's favorites. My grandmother traveled with us for years up until her death, and it was her favorite attraction. So we definitely wanted to get on and see this brand new attraction. I tried to stay away from a lot of spoilers. I know some people had already been on it beforehand,
Mhm.
and I wanted to stay away from any spoilers. So this day we did purchase lightning lanes to make sure that we got on this attraction. I had no idea what lines were going to be like, and I think this was one of the ones, this opening date was announced before some of the other opening dates, I
Yeah,
believe.
I think we knew they had told us Memorial Day weekend quite a while back, like, it was
Mhm.
around Memorial Day time,
Yes.
early on, so, yeah.
Yeah. And since then, they announced that Rock and Roller Coaster with the Muppets would be opening on the same day and that Bluey would be arriving at Animal Kingdom on the same day. So I thought by that point, crowds will disperse some because people will have different things that they want to go see. But I wanted to go
Mhm.
ahead and make sure that we got a lightning lane for this day. So I did. And after the price, I said, no more. We're
That was
not
it.
doing
One and
more.
done there, yeah.
Yeah. But we did also get it for Guardians because that's a family favorite for all of us. So I went ahead and purchased for Soren, and I booked ahead of time Frozen, Ever After, and Spaceship Earth. Sorry, I blanked out for a second. Which one did I get? But I got Spaceship Earth also. As we entered in, so because we were on the Skyliner, we entered in through the International Gateway entrance, and I checked the line for Remy's Ratatouille Adventure. That's one of my daughter's favorites, and it said it was at 75 minutes already that morning.
Oh, wow. No,
Yes,
thank
and
you.
it was only about 9:15. We weren't that far off from park opening, so I said, "Okay, well, we're going to check this out at the end of the day and see how this is
See
because
what
we
it's
have to
like
walk
then,
by
on your
it."
way
Yeah.
back out, yeah.
Yes. So we went ahead and made our way over towards the front of the park. I did notice there is now a sign outside for Geo 82. I don't recall if there was one there for last summer or not, but I did notice one this time.
Okay. I think it was difficult to find at first, I don't think there
Yes.
was it was not a large sign if there was one, I don't think there
Well,
was,
this sign is on wheels. It's not a very impressive sign for what Geo 82
for goodness sake.
is.
Alright.
They need a permanent assignment. They did not have one out there. So we went ahead. We had about 30 minutes until our Spaceship Earth reservation would be ready. So we went ahead and did the Moana Journey of Water instead. The kids got soaked in it. It was just insane. And at that point, my youngest daughter looked at me and said, "I want to change my clothes." And I said, "Oh no, we're not changing
No, no,
clothes."
no, no,
Like,
no.
You will dry out in this heat, trust me. But we went and did the Seas with Nemo and Friends instead, and the kids always enjoy that one, and plus it's just something to sit down for a few
Mhm.
minutes in.
I
Then
bet they were plenty cool in there, soaking wet in there in the
yes.
air conditioning in the
Yes,
darkness.
absolutely,
Yes.
right? After that, we scanned into Spaceship Earth. Now, we rode 3 and 2 on this attraction, and I put Meredith in between my mom and I thought that would be okay, and the cast member stopped us and said she had to sit on my lap, so I was kind of
Hmm.
surprised because there was space. It wasn't like there wasn't space for her, so
Oh,
that was an interesting yeah,
strange.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it is
Must
what
be a
it is, but
policy there. We don't know.
yeah, it must be. So she rode Spaceship Earth in my lap. She wasn't too happy about having to sit in my lap, but it is what it is. After that, the kids looked at me and said the dreaded words, "Can we go on mission space?"
You know what, guys? Sorry, that's closed.
Well, we've done green with the older children before. I have not taken them on orange. At this point, it was just really too hot for me to even pretend like I wanted to handle orange myself.
Mhm.
So, took them on green. Meredith was tall enough for green, and I thought, "Hey, why not?" She enjoyed all the other roller coasters, so took her
Yeah.
on green. Yeah. My mom is not a fan, so she stayed off. Now, we had to get the booster seat for Meredith, and I told her this is her special seat just for her, and it was so funny. So she gets on, and she's got just the roundest little face, and she's trying to reach, all the controls, and she can't. Her little face is just being smushed the by the over shoulder restraints, and I had to help her. Basically, I had to hold the control stick when you take over for her, and she held onto my hand so she could
Aw,
participate. And then when we got off, I grabbed the handle for her seat, and she said no, she insisted on carrying it out herself, and it was just so funny just
what a
seeing
big girl.
yes, so that was really cute. I had to get a picture of her carrying it out for herself. At this point, our Guardians lightning lane open. Our individual lightning lanes open. So we went and we did that. We took 2 turns on that, being able to utilize the rider swap for Guardians. And I'm trying to think what songs we got. Everybody Wants to Rule the World, which is what Madeline wanted to get. And then we got Flock of Seagulls, their song I Ran, which is one of my least favorite songs to get on that attraction. So those are the 2 songs that we were able to get on there. And saw some people. There was a gentleman who looked at my son and asked him about something about the ride, and I, struck up a conversation with them and said, "Have you ever been on this?" He said, "No, we haven't been to Disney in 20 years."
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, so I gave him some pointers. I said, "Well, when you get inside," I said, "Well, as we go through the pre-shows, stay to the right." And I said, "And then request rows." He was riding with his 2 sons, who were young adults and probably close to Gracie's age, I would say, by looking at them. And I said, and request rows 9 and 10. I said, you won't regret it. So hopefully they had a good time on Guardians. We sure did. But at that point, we were pretty hungry getting off the attraction. So we went
So I
over.
saw I
Yeah.
saw a little update on Guardians this week, and I don't know if it's something that's here to stay or if it was temporary. But as you had mentioned, go in and go to the right. But they seem to have kind of capped that off now with a little queue area just outside the doors. So when you go out into the right, they were kind of corralling you within ropes. So you had 3 sections, and then they were releasing a section at a time rather than everybody just piling out and going down the hallway based on who got out the doors first. And I
Okay.
also heard they sometimes change which group they take first. So I think
Oh,
that is intended to alleviate the rush to the doors because you just never know. So
yeah.
maybe better to kind of like hang to the back and wait and see which line goes first and
Good.
hop in the
Right.
end of
Yeah.
that, or just be patient because it's like a matter of a couple minutes once you're that far into it.
Yes.
So just enjoy it. But I
Yes.
just remembered that when you said about everybody go to the right. I just saw, I don't know, it was like a reel on Facebook or TikTok or something just in the
Yeah.
last couple days. I saw that change.
Well, they had the middle doors kind of roped off at the last, pre-show room, and I knew that
Okay.
that had been happening, so but they weren't trying to corral anybody, and listen, I am not one of those people that goes and just zooms directly for the door. We stayed to the right, but I wasn't close to the door because, as you
Right.
said, you pour out into this one big space, and then you have
Mhm.
to funnel in into an individual line, and
Right.
my
Especially
kids
when you're
were
traveling with kids, you want to try to
yeah.
keep everybody close and not be
Yes.
stampeded. So,
Yeah, and my kids want to see the pre-show. I mean, they're still at the
uh-huh.
age where this is still exciting to them, so they wanna see the pre-show, and we rode that and, Madeline, for all of her, wanting to be afraid on other roller coasters, loves this ride, so it was fun for her. At this point, and then we went over to for had lunch at Sunshine Seasons. I wanted to utilize our quick service credits. Had I not had the plan, I probably would have skipped lunch to be able to go and enjoy the booths over at the Flower and Garden Festival. But I did eat a light lunch utilizing my credits. I wanted to get the kids to eat because I know the booths are not of interest to them.
Uh-huh.
And then we went on Soarin'. So I would say Soarin' Across America is my number 2 favorite show. So
Wait, of the 3 Sorens
of the
or
3
of all
Soarin',
shows? Okay.
of the 3 Soarin', of the 3 Soarins, it's my number 2.
Okay.
California is still my number 1, and
Okay.
I'm not sure if that's for the nostalgia factor because it was so new and exciting when it debuted,
Uh-huh.
which leaves World as number 3. Now, when we were in the queue, my daughter said, "Can we get the front and in the middle?" And I said, "We're just going to get where they can put us." Because the line was an hour long at that point, and I said, "We're just gonna get where they can put us." But as
I
we were
love that
going
she knows that, though. I
Yes,
love that your kid knows it's a thing that the best seating is in the front of the middle. On
yes,
the other hand, I hate that it's a thing that if you're off to the sides, things are like a little crooked and leaning. So it shouldn't be a thing to have to request the middle. I feel like it didn't used to be
right.
until the second update. The
Yeah,
original
until
Sword, I can't even think. California, Sword over
yeah.
California was first, of course. And I feel like you didn't get the leaning on that one, but
No, and I think because that was actually true film as opposed to,
yes,
Around the World was so much CG work.
CG, yes.
Yeah, and so what ended up happening is we get called through and we get down to the last to theater to the 3rd section or is area C, and so I thought, "Okay, we're gonna be on the side, not a big deal," and we were the last people through, so I thought, "Oh, we're gonna be 3rd row in the last section," and then when we get there, the cast member said, "How many?" I said, 5. She said, "Well, I'm gonna have to split you 3 and 2," and I said, "Well, we'd prefer not to be split up," and so she said, "Okay, then just wait here," so she filled her seats as she needed to, and then we waited, and then another cast member came over and started talking to us and, was asking, "Oh, did we request the front middle? Is that why we were standing there?" I said, "Actually, no. They were going to have to split us up." And I, asked them not to instead. So he said, "Oh, okay." And I said, "But if we can get the front middle, I'll take it."
We will take it, yes.
We were able to get the front middle, but I don't feel bad at that point because we were the first ones in line. So we got front middle. Now, the show itself, not giving too much away, but there was some CG in it. It did not seem to be leaning, kind of like when they updated Around the World and
Uh-huh.
they fixed the Eiffel Tower scene. But I didn't think it would be leaning because even sitting in the front and middle, you could still kind of see a lean to it. I did
Uh-huh.
not notice any. I would have liked less CG at points, but there were some times that I couldn't tell whether it was CG or not. So, overall, very good, and I heard that you visited one of the sites recently, is that correct?
Yes, actually, the same weekend you were there, my family and I traveled up to Maine for the weekend because my daughter was participating in a choir event at a local church up there. And we saw the Portland, they call it the headlight, I guess, the lighthouse that's featured in Soarin' Across America. So we were excited to actually see something real from it. There were quite a few places. I haven't actually watched the whole thing, but I have read a few blogs about what's included. And I know a lot of
Mhm.
the places we've been fortunate enough to see across America. So it was kind of extra neat for us to visit Maine for the first time and to see that the weekend that it was released. And we do plan on seeing Soarin' Across America when we visit Disneyland this summer. So
Yeah,
we'll check out what it's like out there,
that'll be
which I'm
fun,
assuming
yes.
is identical, but still, different
Yeah,
place,
I'm
so
guessing
different
only
experience.
the very last scene will be the different scene for both
Mhm.
parks because of the coast, but, yeah, I did start in the upper northeast part of the United States and worked its way down and over towards the west, and featured both coastlines quite beautifully, and after it was as the show is ending and you're going back down, somebody starts USA, US.
Oh my goodness.
But it really felt very patriotic, and the whole queue, even as you're going up to it, it just all feels very patriotic, and Disney's really leaning into this 250th birthday celebration. We could tell throughout the park, so enjoyed that. It was fun. We were going to get on the land after that, but I changed some lightning lanes, updated that, got one for later, so we thought, "Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and start making our way through World Showcase." However, I was able to get a test track lightning lane and, forced everyone onto that too. So, told Madeline this is just like riding in a car. Went on that, and when we got off, Meredith looked at me and said that was boring. So, I don't know why.
True. True,
Yeah.
Meredith. I remember when I first rode that, we were there with my cousin, who I think was around 10 or 11 at the time, and he got off of it and said, "Well, it's no different than riding in a car with my cousins." And I was like, "Shh." I'm like, "Don't tell your parents that that's how I drive. Come on, kid." Because I was a cousin he was talking about.
Wow, that's so funny.
Then it was when you were crash test dummies.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, goodness. So, but yeah, Lincoln definitely he enjoys that ride, and I told him, I said, "Well, even if we can't get a lightning lane for it, I'll take you through the single rider line." He's
Mhm.
definitely old enough that he's comfortable with that, and so am I. We did see, interestingly, a snake, a black snake outside of the attraction queue, like,
That is
right
not
where
interesting, Rachel. That is horrendous.
Yes.
That's not supposed to be in my Disney bubble.
No,
I
it is
know it's
not,
Florida, and I
and
know they have those there, but
yes,
no.
they did have those there, actual real life snakes. Those are Lincoln's favorite animal, and he has asked me for one. I've told him no, and so he was super interested in that, and cast members were trying to keep people away from it until they could get someone out there to safely remove the snake from the
Okay.
area. You could tell the snake was stressed, and I told him that
Yeah.
later. He said, "Why didn't you want me to get close to it?" I said, "It was very stressed out," and he said, "But it was moving so slow," and I said, "Yes, it was moving slow and erratically because it was looking for some place to go." And people were crowding around. I said, "It was very stressed out." And he said, "Well, it wasn't a dangerous snake." And I said, "No, it wasn't a dangerous snake, but any snake that's stressed out will probably bite you." So by the time he got off the attraction, it was no longer there. So they got someone out there to safely remove that. But we started our way through World Showcase at that point and went into Frozen, used our lightning lane there. And it was very hot, and we didn't have to wait in line long. But if you are going to have to wait in line, Frozen's not a bad one to wait in line
Mm.
because so much of it is inside. But rode that all together. Tried to eat as much as I could around World Showcase, but Missy, it was so hot. It was so hot.
It's the problem with outdoor eating. I'm telling you, no, I hate eating outside when it's hot. I just hate
Yeah,
it. It's not enjoyable for me.
yeah,
It makes me feel sick. So yeah, it's a shame when you can't enjoy that food around World
yes.
Showcase because of the heat.
Yes, and the lines were probably the lowest I've just about ever seen them. I was
Uh-huh.
really surprised the line to the food booths, but I think also it was just so hot. I mean, who wants to stand outside in the heat using those? So Meredith, I managed to keep her awake until we got off of Frozen, and then I said, "Do you want to take a nap?" And she said, "Yes." So I put her in the stroller, she fell asleep pretty quickly, and, I told the 2 older kids, I said, "Hey, there's a show over in the American Pavilion that you guys haven't seen before." I said, "Lincoln, you studied a few of these things this year for your history class." I said, "You might enjoy it." And I know my mom likes the show, and I like the show too, but I was not about to get Meredith up, so I said, "Why don't you guys go see the show? You'll be able to sit down in air conditioning for a while, rest your feet, cool off. I'll find somewhere quiet to sit with Meredith while she sleeps, and everybody will be happier at the end of
Uh-huh.
it." So they went to the show. I really thought a storm was about to roll in. I went over to the Morocco Pavilion. First, I went over and there was a bananas Foster bread pudding in the American Pavilion at the booth there. And I wanted to try it. It was delicious. It really needed to be shared. It was a hearty portion. But it was wonderful. So I sat in a shaded area and ate that while she slept. And then I went over to the Morocco Pavilion and sat back in the tile room area
Uh-huh.
and watched what looked like a storm was about to roll in, and I kinda hoped that it had. I was completely covered and protected, but they were also in a show, so I thought, "If we can get a 15-minute pour just to reduce the
Cool it
temperature by
down a
5
little.
degrees."
Yeah.
Yeah, but it never came. So, met up with them afterwards, and I also got the captain's board, which is in the area between where Canada ends and over towards the Imagination Pavilion area, and that was
Okay.
a cheese plate, and it was wonderful and I wanted to love it, but cheese in 95-degree weather, another
Pass.
thing that
Nope.
just doesn't go too
Yeah.
well.
That
So,
doesn't work too great for
yeah.
me. No.
Yes, so we rode, the Imagination attraction, which, my kids think is so funny with the stinky part. We rode that and then, went over and rode the land together, and so, Missy, you noticed my shirt before we even started recording, and
That's right. And I needed her to explain because I've seen the shirt online. And while I understood it was a joke in that it was referencing Living with the Land ride at Epcot, I didn't understand exactly what it was. So she had to explain it to me. So tell us what it says, Rachel, for anybody who's listening.
so it says, it says, "Get in, losers, we're learning about lettuce," which is a rip from the line in Mean Girls where she pulls up and says, "Get in, losers, we're going shopping." So it has several animated images from the land, very vintage Epcot feel to it, which I love vintage Epcot as it is, but I love the land and I love this attraction and I love the movie Mean Girls. So I thought this was hilarious. I
On
ordered it
point
before.
for you.
Yes, absolutely. I ordered it to take on our trip, but it never showed up in time. I think it showed up to my house the day that I was at Epcot, so it did me no
Aw,
good. But I plan on wearing it on my next trip and
you have
hopefully
it next time.
brightening some cast members' days. So, but we rode the land at that point at this time, and then it was getting pretty late in the day. We spent quite a bit of time at World Showcase with the American Adventure Pavilion, and we needed to go back and have dinner somewhere and exit the park. So we had already discussed, my mom and I discussed we wanted to eat at Regal Eagle. And
Okay.
I know that's one of your favorites.
That is
So, and
my
then,
recommendation from last
yes,
week, so good.
yeah. And I knew that they would have things that my children would want to eat. Madeline loves pulled pork, and we had a couple of extra adult quick service meals. So I told her, I said, I will get you an adult meal. I don't mind. And we
Mhm.
need to use. And so I got her an adult quick service meal, the pulled pork. I got a salad with pulled pork. The pulled pork was on the side, and then it was one of those salads you needed to cut yourself, but I got a salad, but I ordered several other items as snacks since I did not eat nearly what I wanted to around the booths because of the heat.
Mhm.
And I got the baked beans and the cornbread, and we just kind of all made a feast out of it and enjoyed ourselves there. So I failed everybody on the food booths. I'm so sorry. Did not eat a lot at all, but it was just too hot.
You
I
gotta
need
do
to
what you
go.
need to survive
Yes,
down there
yes,
sometimes,
I need to
Rachel. That's
go
what it's
back to
about.
Flower yeah, I need to go back to Flower and Garden when it's spring and when it first opens and it's not nearly as
Mhm.
hot, but, the lines were great there, I was very surprised, but that day, even though we did so much and Meredith slept for 3 hours while we were in World Showcase, that was wonderful, to be honest with you, so she needed it at that point, but the crowds around the parks, I could definitely tell a big difference that day. It was a lot more crowded that day, and I do know
Oh,
it's because yeah, well, and I think it's because Cool Kids Summer was kicking off. A lot of discounts started on that day for check-in,
okay.
and
I seriously thought that was a joke at first because we've
no,
talked before about how some of the things aren't too super impressive, but the discounts are a big thing. So yes,
yes.
discounts starting that day do make sense.
Yes.
Yes.
The discount starting that day, a lot of schools were already out for summer because of the weekend. So I was surprised at how light Monday was, but I guess it makes sense if you want to utilize some of these cool kid summer offerings that were taking place that you would
Uh-huh.
check in on that day. So it was an uptick definitely in crowds for that day. However, I've been looking at wait times since then and it does not seem too bad, even for
I feel like
summer.
there's like a little bit of a lull right
Yeah.
now. You know what I
Yes.
mean? And it's gonna pick up again
It will
soon.
pick
Yeah.
up, yeah, so but still nothing that was not that we couldn't overcome. In fact, we did every attraction there. We also went on Remy's Ratatouille Adventure. We did that at the end of the day. We were the last people on the ride, the very
Wow.
last. There was
Well,
nobody behind us,
that's a
and
big accomplishment.
it
Wow.
was.
Did the
Yeah, in
kids
the loading
notice?
zone.
Did they realize it?
So, well, I kept pointing it out because, we got there, I, like, basically wheeled my kids up. This is, like it's 8:59 and 30 seconds, like, the
Mhm.
clock is ticking down. I wheeled my kids to the entrance, got out of the stroller, told them to get in line while I parked, went and parked. My mom, ran to the restroom real quick, and they almost didn't let her in line. She was like, "My daughter, my grandkids are in line," and I waited for her because I could see her coming as I'm getting in,
Mhm.
and, so I waited I almost went back to say, "Hey, she's with us," but they let
She
her
is
in.
ours, yes.
Yeah.
Please let
We
grandma
were
through.
so
She's done a lot
yeah,
today.
but I kept taking pictures behind us to show that nobody in line, and I pointed out to the kids, and then in the loading area where you were loaded onto your own mouse, we were the only
Oh,
people.
well.
Everybody else fit in the loading zones before us. So we were it, and it was just cool. It was a neat experience to have, and I took a lot of photographic evidence of it, and we did see some cast members get on the one after us.
Oh, good for them.
So, yeah, so it seems like they have their own we thought probably twofold, 1, for them to actually ride the attraction, and 2, probably to make sure that there's
I'm sure they
nothing
need to clear it
there.
and make sure
Yes,
everything's operational
yeah,
normal at the end of the day.
yes.
Yeah, certainly.
So we got back to bed. The next morning, we decided to take a slow morning. Our stroller pickup time was for 8 AM, so I took the stroller out over at that point, and then we came back packed up, and again, we just took a leisurely morning. We had to be out by 11. We weren't really stressed or in a rush because it's summertime for us, so we didn't have to be back at school the next day or
Uh-huh.
anything, and went that morning. Madeline had a loose tooth for most of the trip, and it bothered her some on some of the days eating things, so that morning she comes to me and her tooth fell out that morning. So and she kept telling me, "I don't wanna lose it on the trip. I don't wanna lose it on the trip." And I said, "Why?" And she said, "Because there's nowhere to put it." And I said,
For the
"Madeline, do you
tooth
think"
fairy to be able to come, you mean? Is that
well,
what she was for, or to keep it safe? Was she afraid that the tooth fairy wasn't going to be able to find her there, or what was her concern with losing it when you were away?
I think that was part of the concern that, there was not going to be any money under her pillow for it. But I think
Naturally,
she was
yes.
also afraid that, like, if we were out at a restaurant or something that if she lost it there, then we would just lose it.
It would be
Um,
gone. Yeah.
yeah, it would be gone. So we did wrapped it up in a napkin, and I had told her, I said, I've heard that we can get little tooth fairy boxes at the resort." So I kept saying, "If you lose it when we get to the resort, I'll ask." So it was our last day. So we went down to Everything Pop, and my mom got the other kids situated with some breakfast. We had a few quick service meals and some snacks, so we were going to utilize all of those that morning, and I did get a slice of the tie-dye cheesecake with a snack credit
Oh.
because, I had to. The kids kept wanting to try it, and I said, "Well, we're here, we have to have this," and we had a snack credit left, but I took her over to the gift shop, and I asked one of the cast members at the gift shop, I said, "Do you have any Tooth Fairy bags or boxes?" And she said, "No." Madeline looked pretty disappointed at that point, and I said, "Well, there's one more spot, we'll go check," and we went over to the front desk,
Uh-huh.
and a cast member came over and I said, I said, "I have 2 really simple questions." I said, "1, she lost a tooth this morning. Do you have a tooth fairy box? And 2, where's the library for Cool Kids Summer?" I said, "We're checking out today, but I wanted to see what the library looked like."
Uh-huh.
And, so he said, "Yes, I have a box. I'll be right back." And he said, "You said you're checking out?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "When did you get here?" And I said, "We got here Sunday." I said, "So, we're not eligible for the Cool Kids Summer things." I said, "But I just wanted to see the library and check that out because that's something that's new." And he said, "Well, let me see what I can find." So he brought back a little tooth fairy box for her. I'll post a picture of that on our socials.
Okay,
And
good. I wanna
then
see that. I don't know if
yeah,
I've ever seen one before.
yeah, and it was cute. It wasn't Disney related, so
Uh,
it but then he came out with a cool kid summer drawstring bag for Madeline, and
Aw,
there's
that's
nothing in it.
sweet.
Yeah, I don't know if they have anything in it or if it's just for kids. I know in last summer there were some Bluey things that they were handing out to kids, so there was nothing like that, but still, it was super nice of the cast member. He did not have to do it, was not expected, appreciated him, and then he told me that the library was located over in one of the side rooms where they have the TV set up for kids and they play cartoons
Okay, I know where
for the
you mean
kids.
there. Yes.
Yeah, so we went over in there and just checked it out, and these are books that your kids can kind of borrow to read and return them, and they had all sorts of Disney books, a lot of Stitch books, which she loves Stitch, and so, we just kinda checked out their offerings before going back and eating breakfast and heading out, and we were checkout is 11 a.m., 10:57, we were leaving our room.
That's the way to do it. Most
Yeah,
bang for your buck there. The
yes.
books in the library, when you say they're there for the kids to read, is that like you can take it to your room and read it and bring it back another day? Or is it just to sit down in that little kid relaxing area in the lobby? Did it specify what's supposed to be happening there?
So let me look at so I took a photo of the sign and they also had a cool kids summer backdrop over in the lobby. So it says enjoy this little library for some fun reading brought to you by Disney Publishing, available wherever books are sold. Please enjoy one book at a time per family. Sharing the stories equals sharing the fun. So it doesn't specify whether you can take it back or not, but I guess scouts honor and I do hope it would be a great idea to take it back for, a bedtime story for your kids, but please do
Right.
return those so everybody can share. So they had 2 shelf areas of books, with each one probably having about 15 or 16 books in that shelf area.
Okay.
Yeah, so at that point and also they did have some other things. There was a cast member going around to each of the tables offering kids coloring pages and some crayons, and, Meredith got her hair pixie dusted in the gift shop, which
Okay. Well,
yeah, as a parent, anytime that you see that, you're like, "Oh, no."
it's going to be all
Because
over your car for the
yes.
next 10 months.
But it was not difficult to get out, so
Oh,
thank
good.
you whatever they use, thank you cast members, because I was dreading that, but it took us a good 12, 13 hours to get home, and we hit no traffic, it was just bathroom break after bathroom
Uh-huh.
break after bathroom break, but it was uneventful, which I was thankful very thankful for. It's always good to have an uneventful
Right. It's always better
drive.
to stop for the bathroom than to have the bathroom break happen in the car. So,
Right, absolutely. So, this is a quick trip with a quick turnaround, and it was a tiring trip, especially after a cruise where you just kinda wanna go back and relax. On our way from the cruise ship to Walt Disney World, each of my children at one point said, I'm ready to go home." But at the end of our Walt Disney World time, they were all very glad that we went. So, I was glad I looked at my mom at one point and I said, "Are we the only 2 that wanna go to Walt Disney
no want to
World? Like,
go. Yeah.
are we
Should
those?"
we
But
have flown the children back with the
yes.
dads?
Yeah. Can we just go? But, and I get it. It had been a long trip, a long cruise, a long time for them to be away from home. But we had a fantastic time at Walt Disney World, a great time as a family together there too. And great lines.
Hmm.
Fantastic crowds. As you heard, everything that we did, especially over the weekend on that Sunday and Monday, over a holiday weekend, we did so much. And very glad to be able to go and looking forward to our next trip, which will take place in about 3 months.
Okay. Typically, I think if time and scheduling allows, I would recommend doing parks first and then cruise. But you proved you can do it either way. And you
Yeah.
certainly made the most out of your time that you had there. I mean, you had 2 full days and you got two and a half. You had 2.5 park days, but you really made 3 full days out of the
Yeah.
park time with it because you did so much that first partial day. So, all right. Well, I'm thrilled that you guys had so much fun. I am looking forward to hearing about your planning for your next trip coming up in September. I know it's a big one with the big
Yes.
4-0 coming up for you. So, thank you so much for chatting with all of us today. I'm glad it was a fun time. I think it was
Me
great.
too.
I loved it. I can't believe that your middle kiddo, your big girl, was afraid of Barnstormer and Rise
Yes.
Guardians. So
But
that's the shock I'm taking out of this. But I feel like it's gonna Barnstormer is gonna be something that's like in the back of her mind until September, and then she's gonna want to get on that again because it's something the other kiddos did, and she
yeah,
didn't.
we're gonna
So
have to do it. It's Meredith's favorite ride now, so,
that's
we have
right.
to.
All right, thank you, Rachel.
Thank you. This week's listener question comes to us, and our listener asks, "Can I use my resort refillable mug at a Disney water park?" So, Missy, is someone able to use their resort refillable mug at a Disney water park?
Sadly, no. I suppose you could probably put water in it, but even though that resort refill mug and the free entrance to the water park are benefits of being a resort guest, you cannot use your rapid refill mug for the refillable beverages at Disney's water park. So you can use it at any resort. It doesn't have to be your own resort, it could be any Disney World resort hotel, but not at the water parks. And if you have a question for us, there are a few ways you can be in touch with us to ask. We always love to hear our listener questions. You can send us an email at podcast@storybookdestinations.com or a Disney Life at storybookdestinations.com. Or you can catch up with us on social media. We are on TikTok and Instagram at a Disney Life Pod, and we have a Disney Life Podcast Facebook group that you can join as well. So if you have something for us, we'll give it our best shot at answering it. I have kind of an unconventional tip of the day today because it's not really a parks related tip, but it's a pull at your heartstrings type tip, I guess you could say. This Friday, June 19th, Toy Story 5 will be in theaters, and I urge all of you go see it. Now, of course, I have not seen it yet. We're recording this a couple weeks before here because of our schedules. But I feel like the Toy Story franchise is something that, I mean, obviously is incredibly successful and has been since what, 1995? I think the first
Just
movie
crazy.
came
Yeah,
out.
something like that.
So
Yeah.
it's unbelievable it was that long ago. But it's something that I feel is underappreciated by me personally. I had little girls. We were into the princesses. Frozen took over our lives. And while we have seen the Toy Story movies, they were not something that we watched on repeat. But I know each time I do see one, I'm just reminded by how special they really are. And, inevitably, they're all about the kiddos and the kids growing up, and they pull at all of our heartstrings. So I feel like this movie is going to have a great message for it. For us, I love that the villain is an electronic tablet, like an iPad, because I truly think they I mean, they can be great, but they really are villains these days. And I can't wait to see the message that Disney's bringing to us with this movie and urge you to all go see it. So, whatever you are doing this week, we appreciate that you took the time to stop by here and enjoy this episode with us. Thank you so much for listening. And we hope you'll be back next week.
See you then.